Go.
Hi, folks. This is John Watson, International Master John Watson, and this is Ask the Master on ICC TV. You're on YouTube. Um, I have to tell you, we're experimenting this week a little bit. I'm on a new computer. I just got completely set up on it, and hopefully it'll work. And this is to try and solve the freezing issue that we get every week. I just switch computers and programs and headsets and everything else. Looks like it's working. I'm watching the chat right now. Hopefully we won't freeze, and also everything else will work. So anyway, the idea of this show is to present you, the reader, with a chance to ask questions from a master. I'm an international master, and you can ask these questions in various ways. The best way of all is to send me an email before the show at askimwatson@chessclub.com. That's ASKIM WATSON at CHESSCLUB.com. So hopefully that you'll be interested in doing that. You can ask questions of any sort about improvement. You can send games. A lot of people send games. And a lot of people ask about openings. That's our favorite topic, although today we've got a few other things going on, which will be kind of fun. A little bit of a, as you can see on the board there, a little bit of a variety for a change here. And you can ask about anything, your own experiences in chess, chess history, chess books. Ask me about books. I've read a lot of them in the past. I probably won't be quite caught up on the most recent ones, but even those I've at least got a copy of or have heard about. You can ask about, yeah, theory, any sort of things like that. Now, the other way you can ask questions are um, on the chat. I'm going to zoom over to the chat right now. It's completely in another direction than it used to be. Here we go. An anecdote. Uh, a new computer for men. I'm reading things here. Moving Dutchman. Oh yeah, yeah. I see you've already gotten the message that I'm on a new computer. I did in spite of the delay. Um, okay. The game goes. Oh, oh yes, yes. That's a very famous game. Yeah, yeah. We can even look at that really quickly if you want to. I actually, for once, have the chat on the same, covering up the actual board. So I'll have to go back and forth, but that won't be too bad. Okay, here we go. Whoa, there's a lot of notes. I'm gonna quickly. Okay, let's look at Alan's thing, and then I'll get right on with all the stuff I've been sent and some of the interesting new things we're gonna look at. The game goes. Yeah, yeah. That's the what Hamp, Hamp somebody, Hamp Mettinger, Hamp something. Let me see. Let me see if I can do this. Okay, so what he's talking about. Oh, we don't have a game here. We don't have an original game here. Let me. Wonder if I want to do that. Yeah, I could do that. Uh, oh, not good. M. It's too bad. It's one of the first times I've got something else up. I've got an endgame up, so I can't go back to the beginning to show you this. Yeah, this is not working because I'm already an examiner of this game. Okay, we'll wait on that Vienna game for a second because I don't want to lose this board in particular, the board that's in front of you where I'm moving the pieces. So I'll go back to Alan's question shortly. Now, let me see. The first thing I wanted to say is that last week when I was asked about the Mora Gambit, I'm still going to need a new board. Okay, let me get rid of this. Let me get rid of this. I'll just put up a board. Just a random board. Okay, you should see a random board. There we go. So we could do it. This means we could do Alan's thing first. Okay, what he's talking about is this variation. The Vienna game. I don't know if we talked about the Vienna game. And then after this move, White gets ambitious and tries to chase down that bishop and either grab the two bishops or force Black to retreat, but Black instead checks. Hamp Mettner, I think. Hamp, Hampe Mettner from the 1800s. And the idea now is that White's going to have to run with the king, because this move is very interesting because it actually doesn't just hit the rook as usual, it also hits that knight over there. So Black will be 2 pawns up, probably just 1 pawn off by the time he's through, but nevertheless, not good. So what White does is he runs up this way, and I don't remember all this. I know that you check once, and then you play d5 to try and get the checkmate stuff going. And there's this famous game, and it's a forced draw where white runs all the way over here and black castles with check or something, and it ends up being a forced draw. A lot of you have probably seen this already before. Maybe I'll even check the chat to see if that's true. How am I going to get to the chat? Okay, new setup, folks. So I'm going to be very awkward today.
There's this famous game, and it's a forced draw where white runs all the way over
Okay,
here.
yeah, my head's still moving according to this, so that's good. A little bit of an echo. Oh yeah, let me turn the sound off completely. I needed that as
la televisione
backup
mi
to my
riverbera dentro
producer. Okay, there will go the echo. You should get rid
televisione
of the
siamo
echo.
qui.
Okay, anyway, Alan, that's the one you were talking about. I'm not going to show that game. I can show it next week maybe as a possibility, but I don't have it memorized. Okay, that feed should have gone away at this point, hopefully. All right, yeah, this is all experimental, but we'll get it going. At least my head's moving. Well, why that's important, I don't know, but just in principle, right? Okay, folks. So let me then go back to the board and look at the other thing that I was going to show you. From last week, we were talking about the Mora. Well, here's what happened. Mark Esserman played this move, and black played here. His opponent played here, and that allows white to play the Sicilian. But Mark Esserman is a more gambit player. So what he played instead, this is sort of, I've never seen this before, he played this move, which in general is frowned upon because it gives black 2 center pawns for 1. And like the Sicilian defense, only better in many ways. Because that looks like something that that black's going to enjoy. For example, knight takes is the normal move, but then here, and you can't really stop e5, winning the big center, because if you play something like bishop here, I hope I don't get this wrong. I imagine knight d7 is quite strong. How is he going to stop e5? Next move. Well, I mean, he can play here, but this is looking very awkward. Here I would play. Maybe got an idea? Maybe here first. And then maybe queen b6 is going to be quite a strong move, I think, hitting here. So you don't get e5 in by force, but it's not good. The other thing you could do is play f6, folks. Is that possible? No, that's slightly risky because it's a little loose, but maybe e5 is going to happen. Anyway, this is not a good line. So what is black doing? Well, here's what is white doing. Well, he plays here now. This is the idea. Incredible idea. And after black takes, then white plays here. And guess what? You can't prevent e4 next with a Mora gambit. Or at least you can't do it effectively. You can try d5, but then queen d5 is pretty good. Isn't that funny? So we have a Mora gambit. In other words, if black plays some normal move like knight f6, we have e4, and that's a Mora gambit. Or d6, e4, etc., etc. So you're just going to get sort of a main line. Quite funny. Of course, needless to say, poor Mark didn't get what he wanted because black simply played an exchange Slav, I think with this order. And now we have an exchange Slav. He won the game anyway because he sort of enjoys playing the exchange Slav. Exchange Slav has actually picked up a little bit in popularity for white. White seems to be able to get tiny edges sometimes. And, traditionally he's gotten absolutely nothing. But quite a few decent players are playing the exchange Slav. I believe Magnus Carlsen played it. I'm pretty sure. And certainly a lot of other top players have played it. At least it's not risky in any case. Okay. So now I'll go back to that endgame I was going to show. Let me flip back to the chat briefly to see if people are saying the echo is gone. Good, good. Yeah, I think we're actually in pretty good shape here. I am checking the chat. Okay. So now everything's fine. People say yes, it's great, and I'll move on. Sorry, I have to flip back and forth. That's the one problem with this system. I'll get it worked out by next week, but I don't have an opportunity to go back and forth between the board and the chat without playing around a little bit. All right, so to go back to the board, we have, whoops, to go back to the board, boy, I'm doing great here. We have, there, we have, I'm going to put up the thing I had earlier, which I think was 319. Yes. Okay, so someone asked me about, a viewer asked me about this, which was a game that he played, and it's kind of interesting. We almost never look closely at an endgame, and this is a terribly instructive one, which I will now look at briefly. The game went, the question is, can black win this, or is it just a draw? And in the game, white didn't make much progress. He does at least get the king to move up. And that king f3 is a good move, by the way. Get as close, go up. Don't get pushed back to the first rank. And the question is could black have done better here? Well, I went and looked this up and found some good material in Minas Rook Endings book, and also in, I think, Fundamental Chess Endings. Dvoretsky was fairly worthless. He concentrates on positions where this pawn moves over one. Now you'd think this would be better for black because he's got a passed pawn, but somehow he has approximately as many winning chances in both cases. The king really shouldn't be on g1 if at all possible is probably a rule here. And let me show you how that is. Let me now look at a couple games that I found with this. The first one is Kerry Smyslov. That's the one that the books most commonly quote. It's funny how long it takes to find this exact ending, or at least endings with the same pawns. This is with reverse colors. I hope that doesn't mess you up. I suppose I could go flip, couldn't I? But then I don't know if the moves would flip. Yeah, we better stick with this. Okay, so white's moving up the board, but it's the same kind of position with the same pawn distribution. And white has played this move f5, just as black played f4 in the other game. And let me see if I can show you. First of all, let me just check and see what this looks like on the screen. Yeah, that looks okay. So let me just play over the game as it was followed here, and let me see if I can get some notes here on this. It's pretty fascinating, this ending. It's very close to a win. I think it's actually in the end probably a draw. In this game it was a draw. Let me show you this. It went there. Oh my, do I have the wrong position? This is supposed to be Smyslov carries. Well, let me just keep going for a second. Okay, black moves up, and that's a good idea. It turns out if he moves back, he can get into trouble. In fact, if he moves back immediately, there's real trouble. Let me show you that. If he moves back here, white just walks in, and he's threatening to play king g6 followed by f6. And there's really not much of a defense here. I just seem to have the wrong position here, but I guess it's going to be the same principle. It's really too bad. It seems like the two books gave different positions slightly. Okay, so he checks again and plays that check, and that's sort of the key position. That's the one that matters. Black plays over, and white plays back. And now black wants to stop the idea of check followed by king moving in. So he moves over again, logical, right? And it's really too bad I've got reverse colors here. It's kind of sad here. Okay, and then white tries to penetrate the other way. Black stops king f4. White checks, comes up. White goes over, so now that one's hanging. Black plays over, defending it. White comes back attacking the rook. Now he's able to attack the pawn. White's making no progress. So then I'll show you another game where white did make progress. I think this is almost the end already here. And once again attacking this pawn. Another check. Another check. King comes up. Rook comes down again. And I think they agreed to a draw very soon in this position. So this really shows how black should try to draw. Well, in this case, white. In this case, black should try to draw this position. It was white in the other game. Now let me show you another example that I think is more interesting and comes out closer. But at least you know the basic theory here. I think the game should be a drawn in answer to the original question. I think this game here. Yeah, okay, same pawns, and oddly enough, black ends up doing better in this game. Obviously, that means white didn't play it as well, but let's take a look anyway and see what kind of moves happen here. I wonder if I have the, let me just see if I have my notes on this. No, I don't. Darn. Sorry, folks. I don't seem to have the right notes here. Yeah, that's not going to work. Okay, I'll just play over what I've got here. Let me see. There was he advances, And white gets stuck on the last rank. That's what it amounts to. That's the problem. Okay, there's the f3 move. This position is very difficult. But black has to play really, really well to try and win this. He's going to play this move g4. White really doesn't have anything much to do. If he starts checking, of course, the king's going to come in here, and that's an easy win. So he stops the king from coming down, and that's the only way black can try and make progress, because the king's cut off, isn't it? And the rook can't win by itself. The rook and the pawn can't win by themselves. So black plays here, and white takes it. Now, if white takes this way, oh, well, that just wins, doesn't it? Yeah, sorry. Actually, what can white do here? White doesn't have an option of playing king f2 here. White has to play king g1 and then this, and he's got the opposition, and black wins. So that was easy. So a little hesitation there on my part. Okay, so so white takes that way, and then the only way to win for black is now to not take it, because if he takes it, white can simply come back. And this is actually pretty easy, although maybe I should show you this. King f4. King h2, this is not the exact line, but close enough. Check here. And now watch this little cute trick, because it looks like black's making progress, but the minute he goes here, white plays there and chases him away. Because if black takes, we've got a stalemate. Now compare that with the game. This is actually very interesting. In the game, black plays here, and guess what? There's an extra pawn. That does two things. One thing is that shields, if the king comes in, it shields him from checks. But more importantly, it means there's no stalemate. So white goes back, black starts sneaking into g3. That turns out to be a mistake. He should sneak in this way, oddly enough. And let me just see. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not true. He plays rook e2. No, actually king f4 should win. King h4, I think, doesn't win. Now, why is it? I think there's another stalemate coming. Rook here. King g3. Okay, let me just see. I don't want to get this wrong. Rook there. Oh, rook g3. If king g3, oh, you can just play rook here, and that happens to be a draw. Because on a move like this, white can just move away again, I believe. Is that right? Just rook here. And now if he takes, we've got that same stalemating idea. The same idea. You know, check here, here means that he can come over, and otherwise there's some sort of rook g2 stalemating idea. So yeah, for example, the king comes up over the rook. It looks like black might be winning here, penetrating, but then this drives the king away because that's a stalemate. Kind of a cute line. So let's go back. So really the move that does work for black, see, it's very hard to win this for black. You have to really, boy, it's amazing. You know, can you imagine having this over the board? I'm sure I would mess it up. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, this is really difficult. So what he has to play is that move. That's the only winning move. And now white should try to get rid of the pawn, but it's just too late because black ignores it and plays king here. Now the threat, and you should know this, the threat here is to play rook check, king over, pawn check, king over, rook down. And that's the standard way you win with a bishop pawn if the rook's passively placed in a normal rook and pawn endgame. This pawn is irrelevant. That's the threat. That's the way you win normally in a normal rook and pawn endgame, when the rook is passively placed and it's not behind the king. Notice that the rook can't come behind the king now to check because the pawn's in the way. So is there even a good try here? Let me look. That's the threat. Let's see if there's anything white can try here. Rook g1. Oh, it's the same thing. You can play here, king here, rook back over, but now rook up, threatening checkmate. Isn't this cute? Sort of amazing, really. And rook check, king up, and now now if the king comes over, the rook comes over, threatening to come in and win. And what's the difference here? That's not stalemate this time because there's still a pawn left on the board, and so black wins. Anyway, you get the idea. But it's fun to look at these things and get a feel for them. You probably have to go over them a few times to understand exactly how they work. I'm not sure if I understand yet. I just sort of looked this up and looked at the lines, and it's really fun to see how complicated such a simple endgame can be. Go back and check the chat now. Oh, we're in Jim Tarjan. There he is. Cool. Okay, let's see what we've got here. I'm trying to tell John. Okay, so I guess I got that settled. Things are looking pretty good still. I'm still talking. You can see my mouth. Yeah, John Thomas. That's I don't know if he minds me saying, but he contributed this position, and he drew the game, by the way, which is good. He was on the defensive side. Hi, Jim Tarjan. We talked about you a lot last week. You've got a whole fan club here. So how do we find out what causes the mistakes? So the question is mistakes in chess generally. Let me see if I finish with this. I guess that's the first thing to ask. I think I have. So let me get organized. As I say, I'm really not as well organized this week because, as I mentioned, I've had this. Give me a second. I can't reach anything either because of fixing the freezing problem and switching computers. So it's going to be a little awkward here, finding my material and doing all that stuff. Huh. Okay, let me just see. Yeah, I just printed all the stuff out and it's not working, so big deal, right? Let me just see. Get rid of these two. Okay. Wanted to show you this King's Gambit thing, which I think is really neat. Someone contributed a game here, and it was a game, usually it wasn't his own game, it was somebody else's game, one of his favorite games, between Morozevich and Anand, with Morozevich as white in a King's Gambit. It's a great game, and it has a lot of interesting points to it. Aha, I found it. Okay, here we go. So I was sent this game, and it's pretty neat. As I say, it's not one of the viewers' games. Let me put that up there first. Yes, that's going to be... Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put up a game that's related to it first, because it's kind of cute. It shows you some potential in this opening. My student Abby Marshall, who won the Denker Championship, the first woman to probably even qualify, much less win the entire tournament, played this variation as white. So this is not the Morozevich game yet, but it's the same opening. This is the King's Gambit. Everybody knows about that. And this, in order to avoid, for example, lines like d5, which are pretty reliable, white plays this move called the Bishop's Gambit. And that allows check, but if you look at all the theory, and of course Abby and I went over this stuff in incredible detail, white has a lot of counterplay because he's gaining another tempo on the queen. He's already white, so he's ahead in development, and he's already got 2 center pawns to 1. So the idea is very quickly white can play for bishop takes f4, open the file, and the fact that his king's stuck in the center is unimportant compared to his attacking chances. Now it's not that simple. This is a very, very long line. Johannesson, in his fascinating King's Gambit book, spends chapter after chapter after chapter on this. But we thought that white could always maintain probably an advantage, and certainly a very interesting game and a fun game with attacking chances, and I think probably an advantage. So actually very few top players play this, strong players. Most strong players play this move, counterattacking, and then white defends and they play this move to play d5 in the center. This is a very common thing, and that's what that's what Anand played. So let me show you some notes on this. Okay, so white plays this move usually. It's a mysterious move, but that way you don't lose a tempo when he plays d5 is the idea. And black played here, and white took. And it's pretty well known that taking here lets white have a lot of play. And so black almost always plays pawn takes, and white now has to worry about moves like d4, and he hasn't even won his pawn back yet. So he plays this move, thinking about playing bishop takes f4. And Abby, in this case, she played d4, and the opponent played bishop d6. Now, Anand played bishop b4, which is not a terrible move, but overwhelmingly, if you look at the databases and the history of this variation, and even the books, they give overwhelmingly the move bishop d6, which temporarily hangs onto the pawn, gets ready to castle, and makes it difficult to recover. Now, if white plays here, for example, which is played fairly often, not only is, I think, the knight not perfectly placed, but this is a little awkward, it turns out. And black's probably a little better, in my opinion. So you can sort of take my word for that one. So Abby and I decided we would play this move, knight e2. And I just wanted to show you some variations that come from this, because it's so much fun. I guess the reason I'm showing you all this is I think it might be fun to play this King's Gambit, this variation of the King's Gambit, because the main lines of the King's Gambit, there's quite a few good replies, in my opinion. And most players as black who play e5 are going to know the King's Gambit pretty well. But they may not know the Bishop's Gambit that well. In other words, they're going to know knight f3 on the third move. They're not going to know bishop c4 as well. And this is a fascinating line. Fischer once played this move, actually, when he's very young. And one thing to realize is this move, which certainly looks very attractive because it ruins White's king side, White's still got a nice lead in development, and now even has the g file. For example, if black plays here, which is very reasonable because of bishop queen h4 check coming, white just plays here, that gives bishop c2, and then he plays something like queen, he or she in this case, plays queen d2 or queen d3, castles queenside, uses the f file. This guy's kind of a weak pawn, and it turns out that if you look at this we looked at this a lot, I think white's actually got the advantage in this position. This f3 move it looks good, but I think it's fine for black. So, so black in this game played castles, or in many games plays castles, and white takes, and that looks really good for black because the dark squares are all going. Look at that horrible square there, and look at that check. I mean, now if the king moves this time, I think that's trouble because black's very active, and the king really has no really good squares to go to. So it's not like that is a desirable move by any means. Black might even get an early queen. You know, bishop g4, maybe they're going to be a queen f6 or something like that after the knight moves, is looking pretty ugly. So, and there's still knight g4, the idea he has anyway. So what white has to do is retreat, and you might think, oh, this is looking kind of pathetic. But white actually has a plan here. White still has the f file, the famous King's Gambit f file, so he can castle and get pressure this way. This pawn is still a little weak. There's knight f4 coming at some point again. And also white has queen here. Queen to d3 and maybe castles queenside. And so this is kind of an interesting position. So the most obvious question is why shouldn't black play there, just trying to get a knight in here? And isn't that just incredibly strong? And the answer is that white can actually castle here, allow knight e3, and then sacrifice the exchange this way. And this is a really fun position because white's a full exchange now, but he's threatening knight takes or bishop takes d5. He's got the f file, he's got the queen aiming at h7, and he's got the moves knight f4 coming, for example. And this is really quite an attack, because black's dark squares also aren't protected because that bishop's gone. So just for example, let me show you this. This would be really fun to play for white, a real attacking line like this. Okay, so he defends that. That makes total sense. Otherwise, white's going to have a pawn and quite a bit of compensation for the exchange. White plays knight f4. Black plays knight c6. Now black has to give the pawn back, but at least he's gotten his pieces out. And black plays this move to get rid of white's main attacking, or one of white's main attacking pieces. Now it turns out that's probably not best. I don't think I'll go into a lot of detail because there isn't that much time. Maybe some other week. Probably bishop takes d5 is best here. And then white can take either way, but bishop takes is very interesting because there's some immediate threats, and the queen can come swinging over to the king's side. Probably c3 is going to happen first, very solid. And then he's got this passed d pawn, which can be important too. I think what we concluded is if black defends perfectly, it's probably about equal, but that can happen in chess. It's not like white's worse, and that's really kind of what matters. But what black did instead was play this move, very logical, get rid of the attacking piece, but probably not very good. White played this nice move. Not the only move, by the way. Knight h5 is interesting too. It's kind of a cute move with ideas of queen g3, but also with ideas of checking here. It's a big mess, but we'll worry about that later. What he played was queen g3, and black took just too slow. Should take again on d5. Wait a minute, let me see, is that right? Could have the wrong position here. Hang on. Is this right? Yeah, okay. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Should play there. That's actually the best defensive move. And then white might want to save his bishop, and then just play very slowly like this and have really nice compensation for the pawn. Probably white's even a little better according to what we looked at years ago. But instead black takes, and that is a blunder because of this move. With the idea of knight f6 check, so that means queen takes can't be played, for example, and this knight can come to f6 also. So black tries g6. Now also, by the way, we have an immediate mate threat. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. So black plays g6, and white plays check. That's the right knight. Black plays king over. The problem if black plays king the other way, there's going to be a queen h4, for example, something like this. I think queen h4 will work. Queen e5 is also probably good, but I think queen h4 looks more impressive offhand, because after h5 you can start sneaking into this square with mate, and if he plays there, you're going to have knight takes h5 check, and everything's sort of falling apart. So it's kind of a cute little line. So black runs this way, and now white makes a really nice finishing move, because there may be other ways to play this, but there's only one clearly winning move. It's very nice. It's just this, and the idea is to cut the king off from running away after bishop takes d5. It's really pretty nice. And in fact, black tries bishop d5, but then white plays check and wins the queen. If black had tried something like, I don't know what else can be played, knight takes pawn, then we have this move queen h4, threatening checkmate now. That's mate in 1, and bishop takes doesn't change anything because the rook's covering e7. And I guess, is there anything to even look at here? I would say probably not. There's really nothing much to look at here. So in fact, black played in one game, black played this move and lost the queen, but it's not just the queen, it's a problem with this move knight here check. Queen here check. So this piece is hanging, and this piece is going to be hanging too. So tremendous game, real fun. The main reason I want to show you that was to show you how much fun it is to play this line, this particular line. Abby probably won 30 games and lost 2 with this or something. It was just absolutely amazing. She's won game after game after game with this. And of course, there's a ton to look at. You have to know all kinds of, other moves for black. As I say, there's a book by Johannesson called The Fascinating King's Gambit that you might want to take a look at if you want to take up this line. And of course, there's games in the database. Let me look at the, oh, here we go, Fisher-Evans. Okay, so John Thomas found the game, Fisher-Evans. But Karyakin line against Kasparov with the queen back after the check is a good line against the King's Gambit. Not sure. You could be right. Really good question. I don't remember the lines well enough. I know we had answers to that we thought were adequate, but that doesn't mean we thought white was actually better. So you're saying, for example, queen back to e7 here, for example, or queen even all the way back to d8? I'm not sure. We'd have to look at the exact line. I know that Abby and I had like massive amounts of analysis on these positions, and I'm sure Johannesson also does. It seems likely white has some compensation if black has to make another move with the queen, just because there's so many natural moves coming, but I won't guarantee that. Good question. You're more knowledgeable than I am about it. At least I probably used to know something about this, but not now. So excellent question in the chat there. I will look that up, by the way, Dragomir. I'll look that up. Excellent question. Okay, so, oh no, I think he means the King's Gambit generally. Okay, wait, let's take a look at that. Maybe he means, let me see, let me guess what he means here. I think he probably means this. We analyze, in Taming the Wild Chess Openings, we analyze what's called the Keen defense at some great length. So maybe you mean that. We've analyzed this at great length as a recommendation for black, actually, in our book, Taming the Wild Chess Openings. That's Eric Schiller and I. That's called the Keen defense. There's also the Norwald, which goes like this. Actually, the Norwald's even weirder. The Norwald, actually, you don't even play the check. You play here right away. Obviously, white, if he takes now, you're winning this, so that's a blunder. But kind of a fascinating line. Black actually dares to play queen takes f4 in some lines. That's called the Norwalder. I think there's one other line where the queen goes forward and then back again. But certainly this is the main one. We call that the keen defense and analyze it at some length. I think white has plenty of play. The natural move, of course, is knight c3 because it has the knight, this idea. Fascinating line, by the way. Black probably is okay in these positions, but white is too. And white still gets a big attack, and that's the nice thing. If you're playing the King's Gambit, you want to get an attack. So excellent question, though. Okay, so let me go back to the original game that I was sent, which is the Morozevich game, assuming I can find it. Amazingly disorganized here. Yeah. Oh, what a joy, what a joy. I may have to fake this a little bit. Let me think. If that was 323, maybe I want 322. I'm just guessing. Aha! Yes, this is Morozevich Anand, the game that was sent me. One of the listeners, the viewers' favorite games. I'll mention your name if you want me to, but I'm trying to keep some privacy here. And it's King's Gambit, and it's the Bishop's Opening, and Morozevich plays this line, which is really the most common line. That doesn't mean it's the best, but it's the most common. It's so logical to get your pieces out and grab the center, and it's hard to believe that this is bad for black. Okay, and white plays there, and black plays this move, a little different. Maybe the idea of knight e4 sometimes, get some pressure here. Stop knight takes d5, obviously. And white plays here. Now there's a lot of options here. I don't know if I want to go through all this. Probably not. Let me see about my notes on this game. I seem to have lost them. Today is definitely Mr. Disorganization Day because of all this new setup on the new computer. I actually prepared the show ages ago, but now I don't even know where everything is. Okay, we'll just play over the game. I don't remember if knight f3 is the best. I think there's a bunch of options here. I could quickly check that. I wonder if it's worth it to quickly check that. No, probably not. So let's just go ahead here. I think knight f3 was not my favorite move here at all. The bishop f4 is also played, just the direct capture. But it does work out in this game. Black castles. Now black again, white has to deal with this move again, and maybe that's not so easy. Been a couple games with that. White castles. And black captures. I'm not going to swear by any of these moves. Let's just look at the game. This has happened. Oh, it's, you know, the amazing thing is here's the Bishop's Opening, this weird thing, and even bishop b4 is a little strange, right? But this position's come up repeatedly, and queen c7 has been the most popular move. If you go to the databases, you'll see a whole bunch of games with this. I think maybe queen c7 isn't the best move, but I don't remember why I think that. It's certainly one of the two best moves, but I think there's something else I was going to play here that might be a little solider or better. But anyway, okay, so queen c7, white plays, oh, and good move, and it's been played several times. It's the best one by far. Protects this pawn, but it has also this idea of playing queen over here and bishop takes. You know, I have some really good notes on this game. Maybe I should take a quick look at those. Let me do that. I'm going to really quick take a look just to see if I'm missing anything really big. Oh, this is too bad. We really should have notes on this game. Huh. Sorry, I don't seem to have printed them out. High CPU usage detected. See, now I've got my new computer and it's giving me other problems. So, performance issues, everybody. That's what I'm getting warned about. I'll go back to the chat for a second, because what I'm waiting for is this one program to come up. So let me go back to the chat for a second. Fisher was a fish. Good. Jim Tarjan. Hi, Jim. Hopefully you're still watching. Fish was a fish, just joking. I know you're good when Course Notes called you a fish. Okay. Any more comments? So did anybody like that King's Gambit line? What I'm thinking is you guys might want to play a King's Gambit as white. You know, there's always this problem with e4, e5, right? It's just so solid and it's doing so well. I wouldn't mind playing this. I think even on a pretty high level you could play this way. You could play an opening like this. I think the standard King's Gambit has too many easy solutions, but this King's Gambit always seems to leave you with a lot of play. It's kind of a fun line. I'm kind of giving up here on my attempt to find this game. Yeah, my computer is strained, has strained resources. Let me just real quick, why can't I find that game? I guess I didn't print it out. That must be the answer. Really too bad. Okay, let's just continue the game. If those notes come up, I'll refer to them later. Okay, so going back, Black plays here. White comes up, ready to play bishop takes f4. Now you can imagine if white gets that bishop or that pawn back and starts attacking black's king, you know, that's a bit of a problem. Black plays here, and that was played in several games actually. The idea is knight here to get rid of some pieces. It's a good move. But the timing's funny. I think maybe without queen c7 you can do this exact same thing. But anyway, okay, so bishop f4, queen takes. Bishop comes back. Oh, I think queen takes may be a little risky. I'm not sure. Bishop comes back. And the knight comes in really well set. Now, if you look at this position for a second, let's just slow down. White's a pawn down again, but he's got the bishop pair. Rook takes f6 is a big possibility, isn't it? Bishop g5 is looking good again. Bishop b4 is a possibility. Both rooks can be active either on either file, most likely the f file, but also this file. So there's a lot going on here. I wouldn't want to be black here. I don't know what the official, maybe if you were prepared with a very specific defense, this would be okay for black. But it's scary. It's difficult to play. You wouldn't want to see it for the first time probably over the board. In other words, I think black might be okay, but it's hard to prove. So Anand plays a very natural move, attacking the queen. Queen moves over. Now those maybe ideas of g4, g5 even. Black defends, and maybe he plays. No, he doesn't play g4. He attacks the rook. That seems like a little odd, but we'll go along with it. I kind of like the bishop on the other diagonal, but presumably Morozevich has an idea. He just attacks the knight. The knight comes back, and the rook comes into play. Well, at least white can say that he's got everything working. Sort of almost like an Evans gambit. I suspect black can defend this, but you know, in practice, it's not going to be easy. Anand is not exactly a weak player, and he fails to defend, so that's kind of a good sign for white's attack. c4, just going all out. Let me, okay, I have this now. Let me real quickly check that game, and then I'll get back to the broadcast. I just want to see if I have any interesting notes that might be worth mentioning. Hello, everybody. Very slow. This computer's overtaxed at this point. Hopefully it won't give me more problems. Let's see. Okay, that's that Morozevich game. It's too bad because I went over it in some detail, but I don't remember what the various tactics and improvements are. We're heading towards a highly tactical stage, as you might imagine. When I first saw this, I thought this was complete nonsense. That he just plays d takes c4, and it's just black's too centralized or something. But it is true that all of white's pieces are sort of bearing down, and in practice that makes a real problem for black. Okay, let me just whip through this. Let me just see if I'm missing anything important here. Yeah, there was another game where instead of knight f5, black played knight g6, and black actually won. This was many years later, just a few years ago actually. This whole thing was repeated up to move 15, and black played knight g6. So that shows that black had a decent defense before. And having said that, I think I'm going to get out of here to give this computer a break. I'm going to get out of this whole program. Okay, looks like nothing collapsed anyway. Okay, so let me continue this game. White played bishop c2. Now look at that, straight against the king here. This is the sort of thing I think would be kind of fun to play for white, whether you stand better or not. Black played here, and that I think ended up being a mistake. White played the very obvious g5, and now he's able to switch over to the king side. Although even now it might be defensible. I'm not sure. White plays here. Now you think queen h4 could be played, but then probably just g6. So now the knight's attacked that way. So actually queen f3 is probably a better move, as it turns out. And it turns out there's no really good defense here. The knight's trapped over there. So maybe we should go back a move, by the way, and just see if there was any defense. I guess knight d5 was the way to play it. But with this, that's away from the king side. So you feel like this is going to be an awfully dangerous attack. Whether it actually wins or not is not so clear, but this move actually seems to lose, because after that, white has a really nice little tactic. Possibly you can see it. Boom. See how that's loose. And after that, we have this move. Now white's a piece down, but he's threatening the knight again. And if black takes, you have rook e6, and all of a sudden the g pawn and the knight are going to be hanging. And everything's it's just too loose. Everything's falling apart here. This is a win. By the way, you're threatening the knight twice, right? Bishop takes. So the queen comes over, and that nice move, threatening not only the knight, but rook takes g6 check because the queen's pinned. The queen's pinned this way. Maybe he even resigned at this point. Nope, played another move. Oh, and then a very nice finish. Just gave away another piece. So you can see why why this is somebody's favorite game. Very nice. If the queen comes up, you can either win the queen with check, right, and just take it, or there may be mating ideas instead. I'm not sure. And if the pawn takes, you have this nice move g6, and the queen has to move, and that'll be, well, probably the queen has to sacrifice itself because there's going to be checkmates all over the place here. So very pretty. Probably the queen has to take here, and the king is just too exposed here. It's not so much the material, it's the fact that the king is ridiculously exposed. Let's see if we can prove that. If we go here, maybe just what, bishop d6? Oh wait, we can threaten mate here. Queen here. So black's hanging on temporarily with knight here. And queen check. Yeah, I think this is this is working. Okay. So anyway, I think kind of a cute game. And let me go to back to the chat here. I hope you like those two games. They're both examples of how bishop c4 can lead to nice attacks in traditional King's Gambit style, which I think is fun because if you play knight f3, you hardly ever get traditional, f-file attacks and kingside attacks. So, so Jonathan says, awesome game. He's absolutely right. I love that game. It's a beautiful game. Something strange happens in chess-based program. It keeps freezing. Yeah, that can happen. It uses a lot of resources. I assume you're talking about your chess-based program. Oh, here's some comments. Let's go and take a look at these comments. The Russians use fish for Potser. Audubon played the King's Gambit at a super tournament recently and scored a nice win. Yeah, Audubon plays things like that. I love Audubon. It's great, wonderful style. A lot of attacking chess. A lot of the. I believe he's Indian, right? Is that right? Not so sure actually. Now that I think about it. But anyway, he's one of the young players that just really plays great chess, and we have a lot of fun. It's a little risky. It looks like somewhat less professional than the 2800s, but it's gotten him all the way to, I don't know, what is he at now? About 2750 or something? I mean, he's an incredibly strong player. Okay. Bobby used it as well for Potser. Yes, fish is a common. We used to all say fish. Fish was our way of saying rabbit in England. Something strange happens in the chess-based program. Yeah, I'm sorry. Chess-based is funny. You just don't want to run too many things at the same time. Sometimes you just have to restart it. It actually works very well once you get used to it and avoid some of the things that you can do wrong. Okay, now how is such a player ranked 60 or so in the world? Well, he's been steadily declining. He's probably playing less. I'm not sure. He may lack motivation. He always said he didn't want to play chess his whole life. Remember, Morzevich was up to number 3 in the world, maybe even 2 at one point. I think 3. And did in interviews always say that he just was getting bored with chess. He thought there was too much theory. Morzevich always tended to avoid theory. He tended to play strange lines. He's the one who played the Chigorin. He played the Albin counter gambit. And he always played strange things. And, he'd play something like the Sicilian. He'd play 2 bishop c4, that kind of stuff. I didn't know he had health problems. Interesting. Thank you. I think he just hasn't played as much. Also, I think he got stuck in the same situation that someone like Shirov and even Ivanchuk got stuck in for a while, which is since they weren't being invited to the very top level tournaments, a little harder to keep their rating because they were playing in things like the Bundesliga, the various German team tournaments. And even though those are, even though they scored very well, it's very hard to keep your rating at a 2800 level or 27, even a 2750 level when you're playing these very strong players in these European clubs, other grandmasters, a lot of other grandmasters, and you really have to win so many games to maintain your rating. It's easier to maintain your rating, or not, I mean, I don't know for me, but for one of those kind of players, it's easier to maintain your rating if you're playing all 2800 players. Anyway, so that's a good question. Okay, what have we got here? Let me just see what I was doing next. First of all, how much time have we used here? How are we doing for time? I don't have a time listed here, so I'm not even sure. I assume it's been approximately the usual hour. I've got other things to show, but they might take quite a long time. Yeah, so you might want to switch the subject here. Does anybody have any sort of general questions just to finish up with? Because I think if I open a whole new topic, that's going to take just too long. Got some really nice games to look at, actually. You know, that was kind of a cool idea, that to send me a game that, I mean, it's of course great if you send your own games. That's terrific, and we've looked at those before. But you can also send some favorite game like this, just a game you want to kind of look at. And sometimes there you might even have a question associated with that game. There might be some mystery about it. And sometimes it'll just be an instructive game for us to all look at and have some fun looking at. Third in the world, that's what I thought. Yeah, really amazing. 2797. Yeah, in the old days, 2797 was a high rating. Back when there had only been two 2800s ever, or maybe one. At that time, probably only one. Morzej mentioned when commenting this year he wasn't getting invites. Well, because he's so low ranked, and these organizers are very, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I think it's very boring to have the same players playing in all these tournaments. The same Super Grandmasters play again and again and again. You just see the same names again and again and again, and partly that's because the organizer wants to say that they've had one of the highest rated tournaments of all time. And exactly, the organizer doesn't want a lower rated player, and that's really sad. Because Morzej would do just fine in any of these tournaments, and yeah, ratings are playing far too big a role, and you'll notice that every time they do bring other players into these super tournaments, they play really interesting games and generally do okay. Sometimes they don't do that great, but so what? They play interesting games, and they're top GMs anyway, and so you get a new style and some new openings and some new ideas being expressed. And I don't know if everybody agrees with that, but I think a lot of us are getting kind of tired of these super tournaments. They're just you know, watching the same players play each other again and again. And actually, even that system isn't really fair, because they like to get some geographical diversity, and so you have this problem that certain players are really invited because of where they're from, instead of how good they are. And so if those players aren't very interesting, then maybe we don't get the most interesting players. In other words, players aren't being invited because of how interesting their chess is. They're being invited mostly because of rating and sometimes because of geography. So I don't know if you all agree with that. Okay, folks, I think this is actually a fairly good place to end. I'm sorry I was so disorganized, but I don't feel that guilty about it because I just got this whole system set up, and it looks like it's worked. At least we didn't freeze, right? So we've made progress, and a couple really nice games to look at. That ending, I think, is fascinating. You will see that end game. I've had that end game. And if you play blitz games, I'm sure you'll have it many times in your life. Even if you play a lot of tournament games, you'll run into that end game a couple of times. So it's actually practical, but it also tells you a lot about how amazingly complicated these seemingly simple positions are. And I should say, by the way, about that 2 against 1 on one side of the board in a rook ending, with each side having a rook apiece, is usually a draw. I should say that. There are exceptions. Obviously, the further up the pawns get, the better it is for the side that's trying to win. But just as a general rule, if you can get into that, if you're trying to draw a game and it looks pretty hopeless and the guy's attacking you, if you can get into 2 to 1 on one side of the board, you probably have pretty decent drawing chances. Okay, folks, I'm going to head off right now, and as I say, maybe I'm cutting a little bit short, but I'll make up for it next week, and I'll copy the chat and address anything that we didn't get to on the chat. Thanks, everybody, and as I say, I'll see you again next week.